Okay, this will go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this live program on the EASI India page. And we are honored and delighted to have our esteemed guest, Dr. Zoe You, as she told me just now. And we are also happy to have with us easy country lead Kamya Narang. We also have some eminent OTs and physios who have completed five children testing and they have entered the data. We invite all of you and welcome all of you to this live program. uh, I am very sure that among the audience, we also have people and therapists from Pakistan who have been following up very religiously with me about the date, time, and other details. So I welcome them as well on this program. I met Zoe in a conference in Vienna in 2017. It's called the ESI, the European SI Congress. And we clicked a picture together, which I do not have really as of now. But I have fond memories of meeting her, and she had this impactful impression of a true leader, I would say. So even if we had a very brief conversation, I was convinced that I need to follow up with her regarding anything that she is taking up. And then we eventually found out that has started a lot of programs, in which includes the SI certification courses. It also includes the EASI project, or a research which was going to change the whole world, or the SI world at least, in terms of doing assessments. We will know more about what it is, and even in a finer details from her directly. So without taking much time, I hand over to the country lead, Dr. Kamya Narang, to take this forward and moderate the session.
Hello, everyone. I welcome you all to our discussion with Dr. Zoe Mayu. And now I would, without a further ado, I would like to request Dr. Zoe Mayu to start her presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Manish and Kamya. I am just thrilled to be here, spending time with our colleagues in India and Pakistan and the whole region. We are really appreciative of all of the efforts that have gone on in this region. I'm going to share my screen now and share some slides to give you a little bit of an overview of our project. And then we will have time for questions. So I'm just very happy to be here. I know it's late in the evening for many of you, so we appreciate you taking the time to hear more about this initiative and our projects. So this evening, I want to share mostly about this new evaluation tool, the evaluation in air sensory integration. But I want to help you understand how it came about through the larger project that it's part of. So Manish mentioned the European Congress in 2017, where we did have a chance to meet. This initiative, which is called the Air Sensory Integration 2020 Vision, was originated at a similar conference that was held in Finland in 2014. And I like to share this story because I think that for all of us, it can be inspiring to think about that, you know, friends and colleagues, or even just on your own, you might have an idea. And with enough energy and determination, we can take a small idea and make it into something quite large. So we had a group that was gathered at this conference, experts from around the world, and we were actually watching the World Cup. The World Cup was going on at the time, so there was a lot of excitement and interest in the game. And as we were watching the game, we started talking about differences culturally around the world, and especially around assessment and sensory integration in general, the work of in sensory integration. And during this conversation, it came about the idea that Dr. Ayers, Dr. Jean Ayers, who I'm sure you all know the name, would have been 100 years old in the year 2020. So we thought about, we should really do something to commemorate this important date, her 100th birthday. In 2014, the year 2020 sounded so far away. It sounded like we had so much time. So we developed a vision for the year 2020. We wrote this vision there in the bar, and I think it still holds up. It's quite good, a good one, that Ayers sensory integration will have a strong international presence with demonstrated scholarship, means for valid, comprehensive assessment, and pathways for training to ensure the ongoing development, standards of excellence, and effective implementation of this important work. It's simple, but it outlines what we were hoping to see by the year 2020. And so in order to, we all know as therapists, we have to set goals so that we know if we've achieved the things that we're aiming for. And in this vision, we had identified 3 important areas: scholarship, clarity in assessment, and standards for education and training. And so we wrote specific goals. You'll see that our goals had themes of 100 for the 100th birthday and 20 for the year 2020. So the first goal for scholarship was that we would have identified 100 papers in peer-reviewed journals that contributed in some way to the understanding of Ayers sensory integration, that we would have accessible, valid, reliable tests that would be internationally normed in 100 countries at low or no cost. That's a pretty lofty goal. And that's actually the one we're going to talk most about today. And that sensory integration training would have clear pathways that would be recognized in 100 countries. So these were the goals we set. And on that first day in 2020, they sounded very high. You know, we knew we were setting goals that were high, but we also felt determined. And so why did we choose these goals? We really felt that these were all core elements of who Dr. Ayers was. Dr. Ayers was not a frivolous person who would want other things if she were here to celebrate her 100th birthday. We thought these were the types of things that would be important to her. She was very committed to scholarship. She spent her entire life developing a track of scientific inquiry. She was very methodical and systematic about her scholarship. She also considered assessment core to the development of her sensory integration theory. She never would consider trying to provide intervention for a child if she did not feel that she had taken the time and effort to fully understand that child. And so she could help the parents, and also that she could plan specific intervention. She was not one to try this or trial and error. She was very systematic in the intervention that she planned. She was also very committed to education. This is Dr. Ayers in her clinic. And for many, many years, over 25 years, she had a course where therapists would come from around the world to study with her. They would spend 4 months and have theory with her in the morning, sitting on the mats, just like this in her clinic area, and then treating children in the afternoon with her mentorship. It was really a wonderful experience, but something that she thought was very important to really in a deep way provide training to therapists so that they could use this work appropriately. So just a little update on these goals from the time that we started them in 2014. If you haven't seen this page, this site, it's the ASI2020vision.org site. We have some information on the goals, and especially for goal 1, if you're interested in literature, keeping up with articles, we have volunteers around the world. Maybe some of you are helping us with this. Volunteers around the world read papers usually every month. And then we get their feedback, and if the papers are contributing in a way that seems in line with their sensory integration, then they are listed on this site. We're a little behind on this goal because the other goals have been so encompassing, but we do think that maybe now by our extended deadline, because of the pandemic, our original deadline was July of 2020, which would have been Dr. Ayer's 100th birthday. But of course, we didn't anticipate a pandemic. So everything's a little bit pushed back. We're continuing to review the papers. But on this site, and so we may get to 100, we'll see. But really, I still feel that we've met our vision by 2020, because fortuitously in the year 2020, Ayer's sensory integration was named as on the list of evidence-based practices through an important review that's outside of our field. Frank Porter Graham Council on Exceptional Children report named Ayer's sensory integration as an evidence-based practice. So if you haven't seen that publication, you'd probably want to get a hold of it. And I think just that says so much about the work that's gone in to clarifying and ensuring that this frame of reference is fully understood. But this site for Goal 1 is a good resource for you if you'd like to keep up on current literature. The third goal led to the development of an organization, an international organization, the International Council for Education in Ayer's Sensory Integration. They have developed standards for training. And the really wonderful aspect of this is that as therapists, if you complete a training program that is recognized by the council, then your training would be recognized anywhere in the world. And sorry, got a little distracted there for a second. And so if you were to move from one place to another, the training that you have in India would be recognized in Pakistan or anywhere else you would go where there are training programs that are overseen by ICZ. But even more important, if you're treating a child in a family or an individual, and that family maybe moves to another part of the world, you could feel confident that you could refer to another therapist who has similar training to yours. So we're really happy to have this in place as well. So the main thing I wanted to share with you today was the second goal, developing valid, reliable tools for comprehensive assessment. How can we ensure that we would get a set of tests that could even approximate Dr. Ayer's work? And so, like Dr. Ayers, we really thought about the children. We thought about the children who come to us with their needs and the things that their families tell us. And we've tried to stay very focused on the children. As we launched this project, we knew that we'd have a lot of personalities, a lot of cultures and people from all different backgrounds from around the world working on this, and that there would be the opportunity for the possibility of differences of opinion, personal agendas. So we chose a theme, Children Understood, and we've tried really diligently to stay focused, not to get distracted by other things that might get in the way, and to really stay focused on remembering that our purpose is to understand children fully. And that has led to this set of tests, the evaluation in Ayer's sensory integration. So I want to tell you a little bit more about these, and then we'll have time for discussion and questions. So we started with a team, and that we started first with the authors. My good friends and colleagues, Dr. Suzanne Smith-Rowley and Dr. Diane Parham. Many of you probably know them, at least through their work. And the three of us worked with Dr. Ayers while she was developing the sensory integration and praxis tests. So we felt that we had a very strong shared background in understanding some of the things that were important to Dr. Ayers, how she viewed things, how she went about her work and test development. And this really helped us to be cohesive in thinking about what we wanted to do with the set of tests. So we developed our test and then we wanted to study them. So we worked closely with our other good friend and colleague, Dr. Roseanne Schaaf at Thomas Jefferson University. And we studied the test in several pilot studies with some of the OTD students. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the test in a minute, but just to give you a little bit more about our coordinating team. We knew that we would have, if we wanted to be in many countries, we would have a lot of translation that was necessary. So we have Judith Abalenda is our translation coordinator. And then we have some specialized materials that are 3D printed. So Daur Duic, who's from Croatia, Judith is in Spain, originally from Argentina. Daur is in Croatia. He is our 3D materials coordinator. So as I said, Diane and Suzanne and I worked together to come up with the test. And we thought about what would doctors want to see today? You know, what would be some of the things that she would be thinking about that maybe were missing from the SIPT? How could we make some of the testing easier, more cost effective? These were the kinds of things that we had in mind. And then we had to think about a plan, you know, how we would go out to the world. So we divided the world into 20 regions. Just briefly, I want to show you this is, so we have 5 regions in Africa, and in each region we have a region lead, and then we also have country leads. So the region leads got started with identifying the countries that might participate. We all worked together. We found leads for each country that would participate. So here we are in Asia with Manish is our region lead for region 8, and Stephen Chan for some of the regions of East and Southeast Asia. And then I did want to highlight Kamya. I'm not showing you all of our country leads, and I think that Pooja is with us as well. Pooja was our first country lead for India, and then now Kamya has stepped in, and we just are so appreciative to both Manish and Kamya for all their efforts. India is a very important country for us. Of course, the population is quite large there, and we do hope to have large numbers as part of the normative data collection. I know we have friends from Pakistan. Pakistan has been amazing. They really organized and tested so many children before the pandemic hit. So that was really wonderful. Just briefly, the other regions. This is Australia, the Caribbean, the United States, and Canada. We have 4 main regions in Europe. And then we have the Middle East, as well as Mexico, Central America, and South America. So we have an amazing team of region leads and country leads who work together. Then the region and country leads identify testers. We have had over 100 countries involved at various times. Again, we did not expect the pandemic, but it came anyway. So far we have 125 children tested and entered into our data collection system. Of course, we need more. India is a very large country. We have set goals for each country that are based on population. And we don't know if we'll hit those goals. The pandemic did put us back a bit, but we are hopeful. And hopefully some of you listening might consider being a tester. We'll have time to talk more about that. So we have 20 tests. We are underway with our normative data collection. We have tested over 2,600 children now around the world. So that's a pretty large sample, even with the pandemic. And now what we're hoping, so we're going to start with that set of about 2,600. We may get closer to 3,000 children by the time we do our analyses in the next few months. And we're going to develop what we're thinking about as preliminary norms. We believe that we have enough data to establish some preliminary norms. We're working on a scoring program. So our plan at this time is that professionals would be able to use the test and score them by about August or September of this year. And then we hope that the pandemic is waning. Things are so varied across the world. Things are looking better in the US, in some parts of the US, maybe not so much everywhere in the world, but things are starting, where things are opening up, testers are getting back to testing. So our hope is that we will have final norms by next year, and then the scores will be more set at that time. So just one note about the test. I mentioned 3D printing. It's something that a lot of people have been interested in with the test. So we had a goal to have tests that could be at a very low or no cost. I mean, nothing is at a no cost, because even printing your own test sheets from your own computers requires ink and paper. And so we think about this as low cost. And the low cost comes from the idea that, there's no profit making involved. So with the tactile test, we needed some shapes that would be novel yet standard. And so we had the idea to use 3D printing. For the normative data collection and for the first use of the test, we really want to ensure that we have exactly the same shapes that are safe, that are non-toxic. And so what we have at this point is a list of about 10 verified printers around the world who have met all the specifications and can make these shapes. Kamya and Manish and I and Dawar, we're thinking about and working towards identifying a printer for India. So if any of you out there happen to know someone in the 3D printing business, and maybe let us know, and we might talk about checking on meeting the specifications. So we have shapes that we use for the tactile perception test. These are shapes that we feel in the hand. They're printed with magnets inside of them, which really facilitates the management of the test materials. We also have an oral tactile perception test. So we have some 3D printed shapes that we mount on standard water bottles for that test. So I mentioned the fact that the EASI do not have a profit element. We do have a copyright on the name, just so that no one can tell us we can't use the name. We love the name, the EASI. We are aiming to keep the test as easy as possible. One of our colleagues had a dream and came to us and said, I know what we should name the test. I had a dream. We should call it the Evaluation in Air Sensory Integration, the EASI. So we have a copyright on the name, but we view this test as being owned by our global community because it's only come about by the efforts of thousands of volunteers. We have over 2,000 volunteer testers around the world who are testing children. We've had no funding for this project. We all work on this as volunteers, and it's really inspiring to see how generous our community is with their time and efforts. We've had one paper published in 2018 that introduced the test. We have 2 additional papers already accepted that will be coming out, I think, in June and July of this year. In the American Journal of Occupational Therapy, we have 6 to 10 other papers in process. So you will be, if you're keeping up on the journals, you will be seeing publications related to the tests. We have completed some research and pilot testing. The tests look very good. We've done quite a bit of reliability and validity testing prior to starting the normative data collection. The test at this point, there's still the research version. So those of you who are with us here and in the Zoom room, as well as some of you out there in the Facebook community who've been testing, know that the tests are a little bit lengthy. They probably at this point take about 2.5 hours to give all 20 tests. But that's because we are still in the research version where we are trying all of the items with all of the children. The EASI is for children ages 3 through 12, 3 years, 0 months to 12 years, 11 months. So that's a very wide age range. We know that there will be items that are not necessary to give to the younger children. Some of the more simple items will not be necessary to give to the older children. So once we have the normative data collection, we'll be able to pare the test down. And our goal is that the test should be able to be given in an hour to an hour and a half is our final goal. So we can think about this kind of a project, how each and every one of us can contribute to change the world in a significant way. So let's see, through scholarship, through assessment, through training. We do want to have a strong international presence with standards of excellence. And really our main goal always is to have effective intervention. We really, the purpose of this kind of effort in assessment is so that we really understand the problem as fully as we can so that we can target our intervention appropriately. Okay, so we are underway now, and it's really, the whole project is not easy, but we do think it's worth it. And we hope that some of you will join us in helping as well. So that's a quick overview. I'll stop sharing, and maybe then we can go to discussion and questions.
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Zoe, for the wonderful presentation that you gave us, and it also helped us to know the entire, development of the test and how it started. And I'm sure some of us would be really, glad to know the story behind EASI, as we have been a part of it in smaller ways. But yes, we definitely have been a part of it. And now I would like to open the session for the Q&A. And I think I'll be the first one to put up a few questions to you. Let me start by asking, so these are questions from, some of our testers who have already completed a few tests, and, they wanted to ask, so it's a combined thing. So if any tester has tested the tests, completed the tests for, previously back in before 6 months, and still some of the tests are left, so what would be the validity of the last test that they did? Would they still be valid? So that's one of the things.
Okay, and so we might want to think about
Test for,
I'm sorry for this question. I think we might have a little bit different answer if we're thinking about normative data collection versus clinical use of the test. So I think the question is probably coming from testers.
Yes,
for the normative data. Okay. And so what we're asking, we do know that we've had this big pause. If you're a normative data collector, anything that's unusual in the testing, there is a form where you enter your scores on REDCap. We use a platform called REDCap, which is an international database for keeping the test scores. There's a form that says missing data and comments. So if there's a big gap, you should just indicate that on that form, that these tests were given 6 months past the initial test, or just, give us the information. Because it may be that for the tests that are given later, we consider those children in a different age group than we did for the tests that were given earlier. If this were a clinical practice question, that's a little bit different, because in clinical practice, we want to test the child at the same age point. But for the normative data collection, it may just be that we can move those test scores that were given later into the different age range.
Sure, that would be helpful. Yes. So
so don't throw them away. Don't get rid of them. Keep them and just make a comment for us.
Thank you. Next thing, Zoe, I would like to ask, how is EASI facing the challenge of technology not available in a developing country to accomplish the 3D requirements?
Well, one of the reasons that we went with the 3D printing, as well as being able to use everyday materials. So with the EASI, testers make their own test kit. Since most of our community are occupational therapists, we also have physical therapists, speech therapists. As a group, we know that these therapists are very creative and innovative. And when we used to teach programs with the SIPT, the therapist would have so many ideas about how to make a different shield or how to organize their materials. So we have let that go, and the therapist can use cardboard boxes or Tupperware, or they can go to a fancy container type store and gather the most expensive containers they like. So the 3D printing, when we started in 2014, we thought this is a sustainable way to have materials that won't go out of production, that won't have a large profit because they're part of a toy or something else that a profit-making entity owns. And that in our mind, the printing of the shapes would be more like, some people print documents on their printers in their homes, and some people go to office type stores to have printing done. So that's how we envision the 3D printing. And eventually, we do think that 3D printing may become more common, that in the long run, testers, maybe if they lose a piece, they can just print their own piece. But I feel quite sure that we'll be able to identify a 3D printer in India, certainly of all places, India, and that we'll be able to make it cost effective. The entire set of shapes right now, depending on how many are purchased, they usually range from about $100 to maybe up to closer to $200. But in comparison to test kits that are usually purchased, that's quite less. So
Yes.
I'm hopeful. I think we'll find a printer.
Yes, we'll find a printer in India soon. Yes. Also, Zoe, can you share some experiences of those, who have completed the testing of 5 children in terms of their knowledge advancement by participating in the process, in this process
Sure,
of
yes.
collection?
Yeah, I am happy to say we've had very positive feedback. That what we're hearing from the testers is that they, especially those who are familiar with the sensory integration and praxis test, that they feel that, oh, these really are easier, that they've been streamlined. For example, we have tried to take away the idea that you have to memorize the instructions. Many therapists, when they were learning the SIPT, would get very overwhelmed by all the words they had to say and trying to say it perfectly. And really, with tests like these tests of sensory integration, the language is a very, minor point. So instead, we instruct, we have trial items, we say something like this, but it doesn't have to be exactly this, just get the idea across to the child. And actually, the testers are telling us that the children enjoy the test, they think they're fun. So we've had good feedback. Now, as far as professional development, any tester in the normative data collection project who submits at least 5 cases is given credit for module 2 and 3 in the CLASSy certificate program. And that completion of those 2 modules, 2 and 3, is also what gives you access to the scoring program for the EASI, which will be available later this year. So there is quite a bit of benefit, I think, to participating. You get the credit for these courses. The cost for that, is significant, and also access to being able to score the test.
So I think the conversation is really going good. And I would like to invite few of our therapists who have already completed 5 testing of their 5 children. We have made sure that they join this meeting, not just as a viewer, but also as an active participant. And this is our way to kind of acknowledge their contribution, active contribution to the whole project as well. So I would like to invite Satpreet. You had a question for Zoe.
Hello, Dr. Zoe. I was so much excited to talk to you and our country for the clinical use.
I'm sorry, did you get, were you, I didn't quite get if you had a question. The sound was a little bit off.
Yes, Yes, I think the sound was a little glitchy.
Uh,
Maybe we can ask Satpreet to kind of question, say the question again after after invite another person.
Or
So
maybe she
that we,
can type it in the chat.
yes, of course.
Mhm.
So meanwhile, Jolly, also an active member, I would like to ask you to put up your question, please.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Zoe. It's so nice to see you and meet you here. We were really excited to meet you and to know about like what was the how it all started and what all uh, for what we are part of actually. So we got to know about like okay where we stand. Okay, so I just wanted to know that when and how we will get that normative data, so that we can use this test for the clinical
Mhm.
population as well.
Yes, well, thank you, Jolly. That's a great question. And it's really what the whole project is about. How do we ensure that all this effort, this wonderful effort around the world comes back to the practicing clinicians so they can use this information. So the normative data will be stored electronically. We're in the process now of analyzing. We don't yet know how much divisions we will need to make in the data. We know we expect by age. We don't know if there'll be very many gender differences. And we don't yet know how many differences there will be maybe across cultures, across languages, across countries, or rural versus urban settings. So that will take quite a bit of analysis. All of the scoring will be online. And our aim is that there would be no or very little cost involved in being able to score. So the only cost that we anticipate would be if we need maybe some nominal funds to keep the website and the statisticians, going. We think maybe there'll be an annual subscription after initial access for scoring, something, a minor amount, just to keep the site going. So therapists, clinicians who are using the EASI would have access to a website that would have all of the test sheets, the manual, all of the instructions, anything they need to review, and then they will print their own test sheets, or they can use the test sheets electronically. There are some forms that the child needs to write on or do something on that would have to be printed. But we imagine that eventually, especially our younger therapists, will be savvy at using devices, and they may be able to score right on their device. The scores would go into the scoring program, and then results will come out that way. So we hope it will be very streamlined, user-friendly, and at no or low cost. I want to say possibly some cost. I don't want to promise no cost, because especially after the pandemic, we have learned that there are many unexpected things in life. So we just want to be realistic. But I think that what therapists can know is that the cost should be much, much lower than they are currently for any other tests that are available to measure sensory integration, and that there will be representation. I mean, we feel that this project in many ways is almost a social justice project. We have children all over the world, in townships and villages, who've never had the possibility of having a comprehensive assessment because the cost was so high. And so we really hope that with the representation worldwide, that children will be represented and they will have access to an appropriate assessment.
Sure. I think Satpreet, if you could try one more time, and
yes.
yeah, yes, please.
Hello, Dr. Zoe. I was so much excited and happy to talk to you. My question to you is, will we be requiring an additional training for ESI after the volunteering for this?
If you submit the 5 cases, then you will have access to using the test. You will be able to get the test scores. Understanding the results, interpretation, that will be up to you. Some of you maybe have already completed certificate programs and have been using tests such as the SIPT, and maybe you already understand some of the patterns or you've read about those on your own. So to use the test, it will not be required that you have a full certification, but we imagine that if you have not used tests that are similar to the EASI in the past, then you may wish to have some additional training for interpretation and knowing how to use the scores to plan treatment and going into intervention. But completing the 5 cases will give you access to scoring. Again, we don't know how long that will be. It maybe will be for a year. And then after that, there might be a nominal fee to continue to have access.
Okay.
We're working out these details right now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
thank you. Then I'd like to now invite Pooja Singh, our pioneer country lead, who started the process. Pooja, you had a question, please. Pooja, if you could unmute yourself.
Hello,
Yes.
Zoe. It's very good to see you. Okay, due to some reason I was not so good, but yeah, I wanted to ask a question like, is there any kind of scholarship for testers like who have limited resources? Like there are some testers who are very, keen to do the test, but they have not resources. So, is there any scholarship is also being provided by your side?
Yes, so thank you for the question, Pooja, and thank you for all your efforts in getting this project started. It's wonderful to see you, and we appreciate so much your time and effort. I think that there will be a strong possibility to develop scholarships for training for therapists, for materials. We have started to talk a little bit to foundations and corporations for sponsorships. I think the good thing is that the cost is fairly low. To get the materials together, we estimate about $200 to $300 US for the EASI test kit. And that's a much more manageable amount than $1,500 or $100 or $2,000 that we have currently in other test materials. And the fact that then the test sheets, the manual, and everything else, the scoring will be very low or no cost. But the Collaborative for Leadership in Air Sensory Integration, which Dr. Suzanne Smith-Rowley and myself founded as a training program, is a nonprofit organization. We do hope to be able to set aside some funds, for scholarships for our training programs and also for materials. But within each country, many of the organizations within each country are also discussing ways that they can set aside funds to support therapists who may not be able to afford either the training or the test materials themselves. So that is a goal.
Sure. Kaushal is a physio, and he's very active. He's a very dear friend, and we know each other since many years now. Kaushal had a question about inclusion of children. Kaushal, if you would like to ask your question, please.
Yeah, because as a physio, main thing I started working with children with cerebral palsy, and in 2014 I took this SIPT course, 14-15, yes. So I have a question like why siblings of cerebral palsy children is not included in the normative data collection, because as we know in ASD or ADHD we might think that might be because of genetic problem. So sibling might be having that issues. But cerebral palsy or traumatic brain injury, that is mainly post birth or postnatal injury. So why siblings of that children is not included here?
Okay, you're asking about the siblings, right, of those children?
Yes.
Yes.
Siblings, yeah.
Yeah, so Well, this is a very insightful question you're asking. This was a difficult decision for us because when we thought about our testers, our normative data collectors, we knew they would be therapists. And we thought, now, if we don't make some exclusion about siblings, then it's likely that the majority of the population could be siblings, because we thought our testers will first go to the families of the children they're treating, and they will test the siblings. So we don't want the majority of the population, right, in the norms to be siblings, because with all the diagnoses that we have, we do know that overall there is a high incidence of familial issues. We didn't want to single out only some diagnoses and say, if you're, only siblings of these diagnoses cannot be included. So we just felt that it would be cleaner and easier to make it across the board for the normative data collection. Now, of course, that won't be the case when we're using the test. We will use the test with all clinical populations. Siblings, will not be an issue, but we were mainly aiming to avoid the problem of having a normative data pool that was skewed towards some difficulties.
Okay.
So
Got
that's
it.
why.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
We have had a few therapists ask us, I want to test a boy. He has a sibling who was in an accident last year. There was nothing before that. If anyone asks in a very particular situation, we say, that's fine, go ahead.
Okay.
But with a diagnosis like cerebral palsy in general, sometimes it's a little confounded. It's not so straightforward. We don't know, are there other developmental delays? So rather than have it be confusing, we just set that rule. But if you ask us, if you come to us and you say, I have a child that I want to test, and this is the situation with the siblings, and it appears that there's no possibility of a familial overlay, we would say, go ahead.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think Kamya has a question again from one of the participants.
Yes.
Yes,
So
please.
Zoe, since we were talking about inclusion just now, so there was one participant who could not be here with us. She asked that why only 3 to 12 years age group was taken as part of the inclusion. Why not less or more?
Yeah, well, okay. So Dr. Ayers chose 4 to 8 years, right? She was an individual person working by herself. She had to decide what she could manage on her own. One of the things our team thought when we started developing the EASI is that it would be nice to expand the age range. We went down to 3 because 3 was about the earliest age that we felt we could give instructions on these types of tests and have a reliable and valid response. And we did our feasibility testing, our pilot testing with 3-year-olds, and that worked. So we went that low. We went up to age 12 years, 11 months. As we saw in our pilot testing, it seems that many of the scores start to plateau by then, 11, 12. And we do have teams, especially in the UK, who are looking at the use of these tests with adolescents and adults. There are many in our team who've already been talking about the EASI ABC, adults, babies, and children. So I imagine the long range goal is to have assessments that go across the lifespan. But we have to start somewhere. So we are starting with this age group, 3 to 12. We feel happy that it's a much wider age range than we've had before. And we do think that we will be able to adapt some of the tests down to infancy, and that probably the tests might be useful as they are with adolescents and adults. At some point, these skills start to go down, right? So that's what we'll also need to know in the future as we study other populations. This is what all of you out there are going to do. We've been working hard for a long time, and we're so happy that we have so many people coming to help and are interested now, so that the research on these tests will go forward for decades to come.
Oh, sure.
Right. I think we also had given an opportunity that if anybody wants to put up a question on the FB page, they would be able to put up. I don't think there is a question there, but Zoe, you would be very happy to know we have therapists from Bangladesh who have responded on the page that they are there and they are viewing the program. There are in fact some parents who are in touch with me, and they're very enthusiastic about knowing about sensory since they have children with autism. They are really puzzled about the sensory issues.
Mhm.
These parents are they might be native of India and Bangladesh, but they are now since many years in UK, and they are also a part of this program today. They are watching live, and we also, like we said, there are people from many states of India. uh, s- like you see this live program also, the participants here on the Zoom meeting are all from very different states of the country, and of
Mhm.
course participants or some viewers from Pakistan as well. So I think we are very happy that we have been able to do something for advancement, for creating awareness, for creating a sense of will, a sense of enthusiasm in so many people about the easy. And I and Kamya are really, we discuss a lot. We put our brains together about how can we include more and more people into the project.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we wish.
Can I say a couple of things
Yeah.
about what you just said, Manish? First of all, to the parents who are listening, we're so glad to have your thoughts and your interest. And I just encourage you to be aware of air sensory integration. There are a lot of programs out there that use the term sensory. Uh, don't be afraid to ask clinicians what their training is, and to learn a little bit more about the different sensory approaches, because unfortunately there are some things that are not quite so credible, but assessment, a full assessment is very important. So don't be afraid to ask and ensure that your child gets an appropriate assessment. To the people in Bangladesh, we do not have Bangladesh included, right, Manish, in our region. So if there's anyone, therapists from Bangladesh, even if we tested a small group, 10, 20 children from a country, that would help us to have representation. So please get in touch. Maybe Manish and Kamia, you can put up our email addresses somewhere so that people can contact us. And we didn't say, I think our original goal with India was either 1,500 or 2,000 children. You have such a large population. We don't know if we'll get close to that, but I think you are still accepting testers, right? And we provide training for the testers. We provide online training in the tests. We have a way that we help you check to make sure that you're accurate in your scoring. So if you're interested, Manish and Kamya, you can let them know how to get in touch with you. But we will be testing at least through the end of 2021. People keep asking me when will we be done? I wish I had a crystal ball. If the pandemic wanes and we can get back to testing by June, July, then we have a good 6 months to finish testing by the end of the year. That's our hope.
Thank you so much, Zoe, for those lovely words. We are very keen to have more countries included in not just Bangladesh, but also I did try to get in touch with people, therapists in Sri Lanka, and we did manage to get in touch, but somehow I think also they have a little thing in their mind about language and whether how would we be able to test children if it is not in their native language. I know we had those translation kind of more work, more perspectives added to the whole EASI project, and EASI was pretty comprehensive about taking care of all those aspects. So I would be reaching out to people in Bangladesh, to people in Sri Lanka as well. I did reach out at some point in time to people in therapists in Nepal as well, but I will be trying again to do reach.
Okay. I mean, even small numbers are worth pursuing. And with the language, the tests are, as I said, have very low language load. There's only one test that has a heavy language component. So there's only one test that we need to carefully translate. And then the other materials, if the therapist understands English, they usually can use the test sheets and materials, and then they can speak to the child in the child's native language. But we do have the test translated into many different languages, so it's not impossible. We just work with you on making that happen.
So we have, I think, 3 minutes more that we can use. So any of you who are here on the Zoom meeting, if you have a question, probably we can open it up as of now that we have 2 minutes more. Any of you, please. Yeah, Kamya, please.
So, Zoe, we did ask our, people who were registering for our event to give us some questions. So I have a few if you have some time.
Sure.
One of the questions is, what are the quick and effective, sorry, let me get this correct. Yeah. Okay. So effectiveness as well as the difference between EASI and the certification in sensory education that we receive from the Chan University. So any comments on that? I think they're talking about the earlier SIP program and the EASI.
Yeah, I'm really not able to represent other programs. I can tell you about the programs that are part of the ICZ umbrella, and especially what I really can speak to is the Collaborative for Leadership in Air Sensory Integration, CLASSI. We have a 6-module program with 4 modules online. 2 of the modules are usually in person, but during the pandemic, we have made them synchronous virtual modules as well. So our program covers theory, comprehensive assessment, the administration and scoring of tools that cover all areas of air sensory integration. We try very hard not to think about this as a SIPT certification or an EASI certification. It's a certification in air sensory integration that covers the full framework. After learning a variety of tools for assessment, then we go into clinical reasoning and interpretation. We cover the AIR's fidelity measure, the air sensory integration fidelity measure, and intervention. We do use data-driven decision-making, which is a set of steps that were used in some of the efficacy studies as well. I do want to mention that we are planning still. We had planned a big 100th birthday for Dr. Ayers that was going to take place in 2020. We've now postponed it to 2022. So mark your calendars for July. I think it's around July 15th to the 20th of July 2022 in Redondo Beach, California. Start saving for your plane tickets, and it's going to be an international gathering and celebration. I think it'll be an especially festive celebration after we've all been apart for so long. We hope we can gather in person.
I think, Manish sir, any more questions?
I think if we have covered up questions from the Google form that we had sent out in advance, we also covered up all the Facebook comments. I have already followed up with them, and we also followed up with the Zoom participants. So I think we are good to let Zoe do her zillion things that she's into. And we really hope that at some point of time, we would like to have you here in India or for an on-site program for any of the modules, for any of the programs. I don't know which one, but it would be great to have you live. We have been watching you from your days of youth in the SIPT videos, and we used to say, who is she? Who is this person testing all the children in the SIPT videos? And we knew at that time that this is somebody called Zoe. so so having said that, we know you from many years in that, but we would like to meet you in person as well.
Well, thank you. And we know of the great energy and commitment of our colleagues in India and in your entire region. So we so appreciate everyone's efforts. We know it takes a lot to set aside time for a project like this. But again, we try to stay focused on the children. The children need us. We can provide insight to some things that if we're not looking at these areas, probably no one else will. So it's so important to help the families so that they can support their children fully. And we appreciate everyone's efforts along that line.
So thank you so much, Kamya, Kaushal, Ritu, Pooja, Satpreet, Jolly, Khushbu, Tejasvi, Anuja, Ida, Siddhi, and Valerie. Thank you so much for joining us, and all those around close to 40 people. I checked last, there were 40 people watching the program live as on FB page, along with all of us here on Zoom. So it has been a great meeting. It has been a very good participation, and I'm sure if we could do something from time to time, it would be a big boost, a big sense of acknowledgement for all of us. Zoe, if we keep doing these programs, maybe once in 3 to 6 months, probably.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Have a good night. Nice to see
Right.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye.